Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, Season 3, Episode 30. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
So, Sylvain, happy Father's Day. Happy belated Father's Day to you. And
That's right.
I hope you had a great day. I had a barbecue fest, as you might imagine. And
Yes.
I had Father's Day lobster, which was delicious.
Lobster.
It was delicious, but I can't say I enjoyed it.
Why?
It was $80 for 3 lobsters. And they were delicious.
What was the mortgage rate on those
Yeah,
ones?
I cash in a kidney to get some lobsters. But, they were delicious, but I couldn't get out of my head as I was eating them and sharing them that it was $80. And it kind of ruined the experience for me. So I'm like,
Right.
Was that a good spend of my money? Special occasion and all that, but $80.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
And I got a pair of On Runners. Have you seen these? The new hipster shoe. You're a runner. Have you heard of On Running?
No.
Oh, they're the hottest
I
thing
run the
now.
old-fashioned way. I don't get steroids or, help.
Bare feet? Do you run in bare
Yes.
feet?
I'm very
Bare feet?
honest.
All right, I'm going to send you a pair of these On Running. They are sweeping the market. I'm not a runner. This is the irony of this entire
What's the
conversation.
difference? So what's with these shoes? What's the difference?
There are 3 elements. One is there's a technology in the how they run and bounce, and the design. The design is very sustainable for a bunch of reasons, and they're just a hipster shoe, and they're new and kind of really interesting. And they got $1 billion valuation now, and they're very hot. I see people on the stage wearing. I'm going to wear. Me. I'm going to wear them on the stage to look like a hipster. They're a hipster shoe, but I'm going to send you a pair because they're really. I find them comfortable, but I'm just standing on a stage.
I actually really like thin soles, just because I like to feel the ground when I run.
Okay.
I run mostly in the woods,
Yeah.
in parks, not on asphalt.
Okay.
But I suspect that the shoes that you're talking about are very effective on asphalt, on hard surfaces. Correct?
Yeah, that's a very good, not even observation. That's a very good conclusion based on what I just said. Because most people don't run in forests, right?
Yep.
Most people run on pretty hard surfaces. So I think that's where these shoes are winning. Anyway, there's not a podcast about shoes or footwear.
You got to spend the energy to have an appetite and eat food. And,
there you go. I love how a full circle. Speaking of innovation and technology, our very special guest on this episode is Felix Cheung, all the way from Hong Kong, a bit late at night for him, talking to us about his IXON Food Technology. Now, he's a Kickstarter graduate. He's crafted a tech that you can ship and store products at room temperature for like a year. Like, it's pretty... we just did the interview, and I found it just fascinating. So our listeners have got a real treat coming up. And how did you meet Felix? Where did you come across each other? I mean, I guess it's a big food science world, but
it's through the Creative Destruction Lab in Calgary. Basically, he asked me to mentor him, and I said, "Well, what do you do?" And we actually have this technology that keeps meat fresh at room temperature for up to 2 years. And I was skeptical.
Sure.
And so basically, I told him, send me samples to my home, and if I eat and survive, I'm going to be your mentor. And voila, I'm still around.
How often do you make that offer? Hey, listen, I don't know about your product, but if I eat it and I survive, I'm on.
Then I'm on board. But it was delicious, and so I'm happy. And we'll be talking about some of his events that he's been running to convince people, because it's hard to believe, and he's really a disruptor when it comes to packaging and logistics. Yeah,
absolutely. And so we'll leave the rest of that to the interview because it's really fascinating.
And he was editor. He was an editor for Nature for 7 years. You don't become an editor for Nature if you're an idiot. I can tell you that.
Yeah. That's for the listeners. That's probably the most prestigious peer-reviewed magazine in food.
Yeah,
food
Science,
and
Nature.
Science.
They're basically
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the news. So last week, between when we recorded and when we released our last episode, the House of Commons report was released. It generally looked like it was released to generally positive reviews by many constituencies, which in one way sounded to me like they did a good job, covered a lot of bases. They made some specific recommendations. One recommendation seemed to be a little off-putting. What was it? The windfall tax. But let's start at the
that was recommendation number 9.
Yeah. Let's start at the top. I mean, what was your overall view? You participated and you provided some testimony, and I think in fact some of your research was quoted in the report. I read through the report. So what was your overall assessment? And then let's put it in wins and fails. Maybe there's no fails, but what did you think they did right, and what do you think that maybe they missed the mark on?
The report actually had 13 recommendations. 11 of them were really about setting up a food policy for Canada. The committee looked at food safety, support for farmers, feeding the North. It was a mixed bag of different things. And all of them were quite important and relevant, but it had nothing to do really with food inflation and gouging or profiteering. It had everything to do with a food policy for Canada. So, and I think the committee took this opportunity to signal Parliament that some things need to change. And so I totally agree with the 11 recommendations that looked at some of these issues, but there are 2 that really, to me, were concerning. The first one is about the windfall tax, but that one, if you actually read carefully how it is presented, basically the committee is saying that if the Competition Bureau study finds any evidence of profiteering, then Parliament should actually consider a windfall tax. Here's the problem, Michael. The study, and we've spoken to the Competition Bureau twice in the last few months, the study has nothing to do with assessing profiteering. The study looks at competitive dynamics within the food industry specifically. It is trying to learn how the food industry actually works. It's not an investigation. And so to me, that recommendation, which is number 9, is intended to pass the buck to a bureau which is likely not going to comment at all on anything really. So there's not going to be a windfall tax. And I think to be honest, it's just a bad idea, because you got to figure out where's the line. Like what is excess profits? What does that mean?
Well, let me just do a quick follow up on that. So from your perspective, as an economist, a windfall tax to begin with is a good or bad idea? Let's not talk about the food industry. Let's just talk about a windfall tax. I mean, my reading of most history and literature is this windfall tax wind up just increasing the price of the good and doesn't really do anything. But do you have any counter to that, or what do you think of windfall taxes?
Banking has a windfall tax. How is that working out?
Not great.
Have your banking fees gone down?
Well, they have, because I bank at a credit union, but that's a whole different other matter.
Well, that's different, but profits have gone up. And generally speaking, banks are quite profitable in Canada.
Yeah, so not an effective policy or economic tool.
And windfall, I agree with you, Michael. Windfall taxes are paid for often by patrons, consumers in the end. And you could actually make food inflation a worse problem. And that's why, to me, I've always been uncomfortable with the concept of a windfall tax in food. And frankly, taxing food retail is just the worst idea, but taxing food companies even further, you're doing the same thing, but indirectly.
I see. So in this baker's dozen of recommendations, these 13 recommendations, generally with a very broad lens, they hit the mark. A few kind of political swings and puts and takes.
Well, recommendation number 1 had to do with transparency. So recommendation number 1 basically suggested to Parliament that perhaps we should ask food companies to disclose costs. Can you imagine? So the Retail Council of Canada actually did comment, and I agreed 100% with their position. To actually disclose everything in public would be a huge mistake from a competitive perspective, because all of a sudden, not only when it comes to spending money, you can actually start understanding formulas, secrets, how products are made, and you slowly make the whole food industry much more homogeneous, which could eventually lead to, guess what? More collusion.
Right. Less competition.
Less competition. So recommendation number 1 and recommendation number 9 about the windfall tax were way off as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Well, since you brought up competition, and we touched on this with your last episode, we were talking about spidey senses, and you are expecting something from the Competition Bureau
by the end of the month.
Yep. By the end of the month, and we're halfway through the month, so you expect to see something soon. As you say, we might have to jump back on the mic for a live episode over the summer, depending on...
This is supposed to be our season finale, but it's going to be a busy summer, I think.
Well, and of course, a reminder to the audience, it's going to be busy 2 ways. We'll have episodes every week, each and every week, you and I, because you and I were on the mic at the Seattle Food Innovation Show with some fantastic innovation. So we'll be running those all summer, but our live kind of this type of format of the news returns in the fall, but we'll see. I mean, you and I have to touch base if the whatever comes out of that study, not an investigation, a study is of any kind of big impact. Maybe we'll get back on the mic, or we'll talk about it in September because it's the summer and everybody takes the summer off, and maybe whatever. Let's move on to the next thing. So there's some buzz on social media and of course in the media itself about Loblaws checking receipts. Now you did an op-ed, not the greatest of ideas. My question to you is, I guess for the listeners who don't know, in certain stores there were some signs that went up that says we have the right, or I don't want to paraphrase, but basically we might check your receipt. Now, your concern over this, is it a concern philosophically or by the way it was executed? Because checking receipts on the way out is not unheard of in this country. Costco does it, for example. So where does your uncomfortableness with this lie? The execution of it or the philosophy itself?
It's the execution of it, really.
Okay.
So first of all, it's random. That's the first mistake. Secondly, they make it a policy, and so if a lot of people are comparing Loblaw's policy with Costco, well, first of all, Costco, you're a member. That's different. So there's some membership validation as part of the process.
Well, it's in the T's and C's, the terms and conditions. So
you are told essentially, and they check everybody. On your way out, they check everyone.
I don't love the whole thing, by the way. So that's a whole different matter. But whatever, we're used to it.
Whether or not it's useful, I don't know. But they actually check everyone.
100% of people walk in.
So to me, instead of making it too obvious at Loblaws, I probably would have approached this like what Walmart is doing. Spot checks. You got people coming in, people coming out. They're looking, just making sure that there's presence there without making it too obvious, and randomly check receipts. I think that's the part that I think Loblaw is not. Loblaw is not reading the room right. I think again, from an execution perspective, I think they should have actually allowed. They should have actually had people at the exit, but without really making an excuse for looking at receipts specifically. So my guess is that the company may actually expose itself to some real issues, PR wise and perhaps even legally, because you may actually end up, because by asking for a receipt, you may imply that you find someone suspicious. And I certainly would feel like that way. So I just think that the execution of it all was just a little off. You didn't think so?
Yeah, it looked a little haphazard to me. I mean, maybe it was started in some small pilot program. I mean, I've been involved in little pilots. Like it went up in a couple of stores, didn't go up nationwide. Small pilot. Apparently, the signs have come down. I mean, this is all third party. I don't think I've seen
signs have come down. I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, I was just before we jumped on the mic, I was just trying to see if Loblaws had made an official statement or what. And apparently, the signs came down. So I don't know. Like it just seems like a little bit of much ado about nothing.
I think they're reacting to the pushback. My guess.
Yeah. Anyway, maybe they can, like we always say, whether it's a minister, come jump on the mic and tell us all about it, because we'd love to.
And the other thing, I mean,
love to hear more.
And by the way, when Costco basically makes you sign up for a membership, they actually tell you why they actually validate your receipt on your way out. Loblaw never said why.
Yeah.
They never said anything. And I think everyone knows why they're doing it. It's to reduce theft, store theft. Just say it,
Yeah.
Just say it, be honest, be open. And if store theft is the problem, invest in loss prevention.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of technology, non-intrusive technologies that can allow companies to reduce theft as much as possible and not have people randomly check receipts like we're in 1950.
All right. It's interesting you mentioned that because the 1950 part, but I don't know if you see Walgreens in the U.S. launched a new concept store, Walgreens being a big pharmacy retailer in the U.S. that looks like consumers distributing. There's no product. There's almost no product on the shelf. You go take your pencil and fill out a form, and they give it to you from the back.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to pilot something because
they're not allowing people to browse aisles.
And listen, I've been to many retailers in the States. You can't even take the product from the shelf. They're all locked behind glass. You've got to wave your hand, and someone comes and opens it up. Theft is so out of control. They've had to lock everything up, which kind of nobody wins. Anyway, so it's just interesting. You got me thinking about that. Let's turn our minds to tourism outlook for the summer. So travel is still
Are you going to travel this summer?
You know what? I'm traveling for business, New York and then Orlando. But other than that, we're thinking not so much. Not just we've already traveled a couple of times. So I hear it's very, very busy around the country, which is good. Hopefully people...
I'll be at airports this week again. And I got to tell you, I mean, there's lots of people traveling.
Well, the good news is, for our podcast, that means lots of people dining out, coming to great Canadian cities from coast to coast, dining out. Not too many from China. I think it's interesting. We're here where there's some high-level meetings happening in China today with the U.S. and China. And part of the constraint is there's not a lot of flights anymore from China to North America, and there's not a lot of visas being issued. So the Chinese are visiting, but they're mostly visiting in Asia. So we still won't see the Chinese tourists this year, likely in North America, but the outlook, notwithstanding that, looks pretty good. Hopefully,
I think that summer will be a good summer for hospitality and tourism industries. However, I actually think that the fall is going to, I think that's when we're going to see a bit of an economic shift because, I mean, prices are so high. Flights are more expensive. I think people just want to enjoy the summer and then start thinking about, what's going to happen in the fall. So my guess, and a lot of economists are saying, you know what, because Germany's in a recession now already, but they've been dealing with inflation at almost 20% steady for a while.
Thank you, Russia.
And so, yeah, exactly. And so I think that it will come back. It will start hitting North America, including the United States. And I don't know if you know, but borrowing is much more difficult now. Having access to credit is much more difficult. And as soon as that happens, it eventually impacts markets altogether. So, and I think that the shock will likely be in the fall. I'm not suggesting that things are going to be are going to change a lot, but I suspect a slower economy in the fall.
All right. Yeah. Well, we'll connect in the fall and we'll see what's happening. But before then, everybody who's in the food service business, I hope you have a wonderful summer.
Absolutely.
Certainly deserve it. Well, listen.
Hopefully, you get the staff you need too.
Jeez, yeah. There's
you would believe how many restaurants were closed on Father's Day. Like they just can't get the people.
Well, at least there's actually, I was reading a stat, there's 200,000 more international students in Canada than there was in history. So there's about 800,000. So that typically, when I think of Banff and I think of, the big vacation places like that, they're all staffed by students. So hopefully at least that will be in place. All right, well, let's take a break. Let's get to our so interesting interview with Felix Cheung, once again, all the way from Hong Kong. He stayed up a little bit late to tell us all about his food technology and how it can travel. Speaking of traveling, for with no cold chain. Fascinating. Let's have a listen.
Yep. We have the pleasure today to have as a special guest Dr. Felix Cheung from IXON Technologies. He's based out of Hong Kong, and I've been working with Felix for a little over a year now, and I've always been fascinated by his technology, his energy. I saw him pitching a few weeks ago in Calgary at Envisions. He just did a phenomenal job. And so anyways, just want to welcome Felix on our podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you, Sylvain, for inviting me.
Yes. So, Felix, can you tell us more about your background and why you're so interested in food technologies in general?
Sure. I began my career as a scientist. So I have a PhD degree in plasma physics from the University of Sydney. I've worked as a science editor at Nature magazine, a very prestigious journal in the science community, for 7 years. And then I also pursued a master's degree in food analysis and food safety management at Hong Kong Baptist University. There I learned food microbiology and all sorts of science related to food science. And that's how I got into food technology.
A really interesting path. Now, you're a scientist. Nature is one of the most prestigious journals in the world. And now you're a business person.
Yes.
So what inspired you to start IXON Food Technology, and what really got you to go into business?
Well, to be honest, it's not because I want to make money. In fact, if you want to make money, I think going into startup, like being an entrepreneur, is probably the slowest path you can ever take. So the reason why I got into my business is that when I was working as a science editor at Nature magazine, I was reading into all the papers, and I saw that there were so many pressing problems that our world faces, and it's not easy to solve these pressing problems. We need something truly revolutionary in order to solve these problems. We can't just have incremental advance. So I thought to myself, given my knowledge in science, it might be useful if I merge it with something that touches the lives of everyone. And that's why I decided to pursue a master's degree in food analysis and food safety management at Hong Kong Baptist University. And there I also met my now business partner, Elton. He was my former classmate at the Hong Kong Baptist University. And together we were doing final year project on the microbial risk of sous-vide food. And just by serendipity, we came up with this technology, advanced sous-vide aseptic packaging, which allows us to store meats and seafood at room temperature.
Which is known also as ASAP, correct?
Exactly. Okay. ASAP for short. We thought it's very catchy. It really reflects the convenience of of food that we package using our technology. And we figured that, this technology can help us solve so many problems in the world, including food insecurity, food safety, meat quality, sustainability. And that's, I guess, why we started the business.
So could you tell us just one example of how ASAP or your technology can actually make a difference when it comes to logistics and transporting food around the world?
Sure. So because, firstly, ASAP technology is a food sterilization and aseptic packaging technology. By combining these two processes together, ASAP enables the storage of meats and seafood at room temperature without changing the organoleptic qualities of the food product. So, because we don't need refrigeration, one thing we can do is we can help reduce the carbon footprint of meats and seafood, which we know is one of the most pressing problems with human consumption these days. So we've worked with many parties like Meat and Livestock Australia, All Energy Australia. They've done independent analysis that shows that by adapting our technology, we have the ability to reduce the carbon footprint of meats and seafood in logistics by 50%, both globally and also domestically.
Wow. Now, we've heard that you can actually keep meat fresh and safe for up to 2 years at room temperature. Is that correct?
That is correct. The exact time, like a period of time that we can keep the product safe and also tasty, depends on the type of meat cuts or fish cuts that we use, and also whether there are marinades. So basically, the formulation. But given that the product is sterilized, we can actually keep it safe for consumption for at least up to 2 years.
Unbelievable.
It's so interesting. Now, you mentioned, Felix, I'm the simple food guy here. So you mentioned sous vide. Now, I made sous vide potato salad on the weekend, so I know a little bit about sous vide cooking. So it's a water bath at a particular temperature. For those of us not steeped in the technology or the food science, is what you're doing basically this? You calibrate how long to put a product in a water bath at a certain temperature, and that is what accomplishes your ASAP technology?
Well, yes, sous vide is, I think, very trendy these days, especially in fine restaurants. Chefs love using sous vide, like a cooking technique where you put your food products into a vacuum sealed bag, and then you cook it at a precise temperature, typically 60 degrees Celsius, to make meats cooked perfectly to medium rare finish. We
say in the business, edge to edge perfection. There's the marketer in me right there. Edge to edge perfection.
Like the medium rareness is usually uniform. There's no gradation. It's fantastic. Yeah. You don't need to keep an eye on the meats or during cooking. Now, sous vide is a critical step in our technology, and we do use sous vide to keep our food products perfectly cooked. But it's not just sous vide that makes our technology special. We also use food sterilization, particularly a high temperature short time surface sterilization, to eliminate all bacteria on the surface of meats and seafood, as well as aseptic packaging, which prevents the recontamination of bacteria onto the meats. The combination of the three technology, sous vide, surface sterilization, and aseptic packaging, is what allow us to keep the meats tasty, perfectly cooked, but at the same time, we managed to keep it consumable under ambient temperature for a long time.
So let's pick up on this. So you've got the trilogy of technologies that create your ASAP technology and this wonderful, this shelf life at room temperature. Now, how has the food industry responded to the introduction of the technology? Have they been excited? I see you raised some initial funds on Kickstarter. I would think there'd be a lot of people who would be interested in that, but is there skepticism or resistance? How's it going?
There's definitely both excitement as well as skepticism, because number one, hearing the fact that you can keep meats and fish shelf stable at room temperature, and for 2 years, it sounds too good to be true, and it's almost like science fiction.
Sure.
And when people think about keeping food for a long time, they immediately think about preservatives and chemicals. The thing about our technology is that it's 100% thermal, physical, so we are not applying any additives or chemicals to the process. And in fact, we can actually use our technology to make cleanable, shelf-stable food items. Having said that, for example, our Kickstarter campaign, we do have supporters. So we in 2020. We sold 2,000 units of products, so sirloin steak and also pork chops, and we shipped it all around the world. And people who have tasted it said it was the most amazing piece of pork chop and steak they've ever tasted. And
wow!
I believe we could have been more successful, but in a way, I feel that it's also a blessing in disguise that we only sold 2,000 units because at that time, we were only able to make the products manually at our Hong Kong factory. So basically, every piece of meat that we were selling we were losing money. And this is why it's very important. In order to make the process cost efficient, we need to automate the process. And that's why we are going to build the world's first pilot line, automated line, in Alberta, where we would be able to make this process 100% automated and also cost efficient. And also, we recently held a tasting events at Edmonton Unlimited on the 12th of June. And the media, all the people who came, all the guests who came to taste our products, including some of our corporate partners from University of Alberta, NAITS, Edmonton International Airport, they all said they were completely shocked by how great tasting meats and seafood were.
Yeah, just for listeners, I actually had the pleasure of tasting the meat. It was shipped by Felix, by IXON, from Hong Kong to my home, my residence, and I was able to unpack the meat, cook it in my own kitchen, and tasted it, and it was great. It was delicious. So I'm happy that the event actually went really well in Alberta. I was actually just going to ask you how it went.
Yes, and in fact, like Sylvain, you're basically, I would say, in quotation mark, a living testimony that our product is safe. And
that's right, exactly.
He had your product, and he lived to tell the tale on his podcast. There you go.
So, what about? People are responding well. What about regulators? I know you travel a lot around the world. Have you actually had an opportunity to talk to regulators about safety concerns associated with the technology? What's the response there?
Well, the reason why we decided to make Canada our first site of expansion for our business is because we want to get food safety approval in North America. And at the same time, we believe the Canadian authority, they are more open-minded to novel food as well as novel process. We've engaged with Health Canada as well as CFIA. We've explained to them the underlying mechanism of ASAP, and they welcome the idea. And they understood that our process, although the application is very novel, it's really a combination of several frontier technologies that have already been well researched with documented data to prove the safety. So they just need the details of how our process works for them to evaluate the safety and also give us the certification. Now, we understand that making a claim about ambient storage for meat and seafood product, it's going to be met with multiple challenges. And because of that, in order to help us get the products early to market, we are also going to file in parallel chilled storage claim for the food certification. Because given that our process is 100% thermal and physical, there should be no problem in approving our products on the market for if the claim is chilled storage with extended storage period. Right. So we are doing both at the same time. So by having more products on the market, we are hoping that would accelerate the approval process for the ambient food claim as well.
So so for IXON, what are your next steps? How do you see the future? So you've talked to us about your plans in Alberta to build your facility. What's next for your company?
Well, I believe the technology that we create, we are going to open up a new discipline in food science, as well as a new sector in the food processing industry. Now, I think probably some of you might know the Swedish company Tetra Pak. They were the inventor of liquid aseptic packaging. So, like for example, UHT milk, juice, Tetra juice, and they managed to create a liquid aseptic packaging market that's worth $60 billion US. today.
That's a great example of this revolutionary technology. I mean, Tetra Pak is like a household word today, but I don't know how many 20 years ago was unimaginable, right? That's a really good metaphor example.
Well, they're the most successful food packaging innovation company in the world. And I envisioned that our company would become the next Tetra Pak, where we would be specializing in solid food aseptic packaging. And I imagine that given the value of the products that we are packaging, the market that we are aiming for should be at least 130 billion US dollars. Now, that's the business side. But in terms of the revolution that we're going to bring, I think we are going to make meat more accessible and more affordable, giving people around the world, irrespective of whether you have the infrastructure for cold chain, the access
and power and electricity and everything involved with the cold chain. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the vision that I'm holding. And I believe we can achieve that.
So I guess the last question to close things off. So you're an entrepreneur. I mean, your story is so inspiring. I've been inspired by your journey since day one, since we met. What's the one advice you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs or scientists that are looking at, making a significant difference into the field of food technology in general or food science?
I would say maintain your naivety. Like if I knew at the beginning that the whole journey would have been this challenging, and that there would be so many mountains that we have to overcome, maybe at that time I would be so scared that I would not pursue the journey. And I think by having that naivety in our personality, we assume there's nothing impossible, and there's always ways around a problem. And that's how we actually manage to develop this technology and overcome so many scientific challenges. And so, in a way, keeping yourself curious and naive at times, it really helps being an entrepreneur and doing things that changes the world.
Well, it's fantastic advice, and Felix, what a wonderful journey, an amazing technology, and really appreciate you joining us on the mic and sharing. I wish you the best of luck. We'll put links into the show notes so folks can go check out the technology and the process, and we'll look forward to hearing more from you in the months and years to come. So thanks for joining Sylvain and I on the Food Professor podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felix.
Let's move on to a couple of things. Food fraud report from the CFIA, 844 targeted samples looking for misrepresentation. And the overall trend is not good. The overall trend went the wrong way, right? So talk about that. I mean, I think when I think food fraud, I think olive oil, I think honey, and I think mislabeled fish. That's what I think of most often. Is that some of the research that they did?
So what they've done, and I have to commend the CFIA for looking into food fraud much more seriously. I've been working with the CFIA for almost 20 years now, and at the very beginning, they didn't think that food fraud was actually in scope for them. But now they're testing. Every year they test, and in fact, this year for the first time they've actually tested over 800 samples, and they've looked at 6 categories. Last year was 5. This year it's 6: fish, honey, meat, olive oil, expensive oils, and spices. And those are categories where you kind of expect fraud to be a problem. Now, last year they actually looked at compliance levels. But the bad news with this year's report, it was just released a few weeks ago, and nobody really talked about it, which is why I wanted to talk to you about it. Sure. Compliance levels are all down except for fish. And the lowest is honey at 77.5%.
Yeah, honey's really problematic. Lots of high fructose corn syrup mixed in if you're not careful, right? Blended in.
And expensive oils, 64.3%. So in a nutshell, Michael, in Canada, you have a 25% chance of buying a fraudulent product if you buy honey or expensive oils, essentially.
What's an expensive oil? Is that like avocado? What's an expensive oil versus an olive oil? And what do you think that is?
Well, so any other types of oils that would probably be, other than canola, all of the other regular oils that people would use, like corn, canola, those are commodities.
Okay.
Avocado would be one of them. I believe sunflower should be in that category. It's actually all explained in the report. Like I said, it kind of. Nobody really reported on it.
I didn't see any news on this. I'm like, is this a new report? We'll have to put a link into the show notes because it's fascinating stuff. I was impressed by, I was looking at the numbers you sent me. Meat, 99.1%. It's fantastic. So tells us when you buy meat, you're getting what, other than 0.10, you're getting exactly what you...
The meat result was really interesting because the most well-known food fraud case in the world is the horse meat scandal in the UK. So people think about...
Horse meat lasagna. That's right. Horse meat
That's
lasagna.
Right. When people think about food fraud, they think about meat. But the compliance rate in meat in Canada was at 99.1%. So that's certainly good news for our livestock industry.
And fish, fish can be mislabeled in any number of ways. 92.7, 93%.
It's not bad, but it does exclude food service. By the way, they didn't look at restaurants, and that's where
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a great find. We'll put the link in the show notes. Now, speaking of a database, CBC's launched a ShrinkFlation database. What's going on here? Is that where are they getting their numbers? And is there any validity to this? You sent it to me, and I was looking at. I went down a rabbit hole on Felix site actually into his IXON Technology, and then I'm like, oh my god!
The CBC did something that was needed. I think in French, it's Radio-Canada, not the CBC, and I've been working with them for the last few months, and I've always told them, you can't really regulate, or you shouldn't regulate shrinkflation. It's the strategy. I mean, people will be upset, but you may want to actually create a database to let people know, if what's changed and what's changing, and that's exactly what they did. So they made a call out to people, and people are sharing cases with them, and so this database is public and open and very detailed with pictures and numbers. So it doesn't matter if you don't speak French. You can just go on a website and you'll understand exactly which product has been subject to shrinkflation. I thought
it's kind of crowdsourced, is what you're saying. They probably got it started, but then they crowdsourced. Send us an example that you've seen or whatever, right?
And I thought it's really well done. It's easy to find. It's easy to understand. And so instead of just being upset at home and figuring out, oh my God, I got at least it's out there. And I've always argued that perhaps manufacturers should be open about it. I mean, I know many manufacturers have avoided the topic, but it's out there. People know, and I think it's just and they have on the CBC website they actually have dates of when they believe shrinkflation occurred. So it's not just about like most people think it's some shrinkflation that actually happened like last month. Not really. You noticed probably last month, but really it's been a few years. So I think they bring some context to this whole notion of shrinkflation, which I think is needed, but I actually do believe it's going to help industry in terms of the transparency required. Yeah.
Well, they need some help, our manufacturers, in their practices. Let me just leave it on the table there. Yeah. Last thing, RBC report talks about high food prices here to stay because of climate change and labor shortages. And the report just issued basically said food prices are starting to moderate a bit because some things are better than they were. But because of these two factors, they're likely to not go down. Now, I found that out that conclusion pretty bleak because it kind of assumes that there's no solution to labor shortages, and you and I have talked about many solutions to labor shortages, and there's no solution to climate change. But you're the one who develops the sophisticated model. I mean, are these two factors fixed? I mean, we're talking to Felix. I mean, right there, Felix got a solution potentially to both those things, like just dramatic disrupting innovation can change the course of the prices of food. Or do you think they're onto something? And what's your final?
Well, I mean, I saw RBC's report, and frankly, I agreed with them. So there are some things that are costing more, and I mean, you want technologies like Felix to offset the impact of the cost of labor and other things, and you get companies to manage supply chains differently as well. But that takes time. It takes time.
Yeah.
Shocks are really changing the baseline that companies are looking at when it comes to costing. So I honestly, I think RBC was right, is right. There's prices aren't going to drop, and I get that question a lot. And frankly, I think it's really important to let people know about what is really going on.
To reset their expectations for the foreseeable future. I mean, I was thinking all the way back to our first episode of the season where we talked about the food innovation challenge, right? Growing fruit in a different way, becoming fruit sustainable in Canada, and the people growing product in the mines in Sudbury. I mean, I just think there's, I'm a big believer in ingenuity and innovation. You and I experience it firsthand when we go to events like Seattle or when we talk to people like Felix. So I guess that could be the upside. Well, listen, great episode. And like I said at the beginning, this is our last episode of you and I live together on the mic for the summer, but we've got lots of great content coming up. So don't sleep, don't unsubscribe, don't do anything silly like that, because we got lots of great stories, lots of great content coming up for the summer. And we'll be back for season 4 in the fall. I suspect we'll have lots to talk about. Once again, we've already got interviews lined up for season 4. So
yes,
until then, listen, you and I will be in touch, but on the podcast, have a wonderful summer. And have an enjoyable summer with you and the family, and running barefoot through the forest or whatever the hell you do.
Don't call me Bigfoot. Don't call me Bigfoot.
I'm Michael Block, consumer growth consultant, public paid speaker, just in case you're wondering, and podcaster. And you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. And be sure and tell your friends and family to tune in to our show. And until next time, have a safe summer.
Take care.